So I first started listening to Van Halen when I was in the 8th grade, or pretty much going into ninth grade. Doesn't really matter. I actually got the Greatest Hits album as a present for the 8th grade graduation. Um, and a few months later, Van Halen actually came to Puerto Rico. For me, it was a huge deal. We never really get that status, that those amazing type of guitarists here in the island. So watching one of the guitar gods was a huge deal, especially when I'm just smacked in, locked in to the whole Van Halen sound. Just crazy with the album. Um, and I went there with pretty much just met up there with one of my best friends, and he called me up yesterday and he let me know, hey, Eddie Van Halen passed away. Um, and of course, I started thinking about just all the different contributions that Van Halen really contributed to the whole rock guitar type of scene. And to be honest, when I started thinking about people that have had a strong influence on my playing, yes, Van Halen is probably not one of the first guys on the top of the list. But to be honest, once you start getting into the huge contributions that he did for the instrument, there's really a ton of stuff that he contributed to the instrument in general that if it weren't for him, I would not be doing what I am doing nowadays. Just the style of play that I'm doing, the type of tones that I get from the instrument itself, the amps, pretty much just so much that he has contributed. And so I decided to do a video explaining some of the huge contributions that he has done for the actual instrument. And I think it goes without saying, I know, the first thing you think about in terms of revolutionizing the whole guitar world is his actual playing. But he did so much more than just that. He actually rebuilt the instrument. He created new instruments. He created new sounds, new gear, new trinkets. So with that being said, let's just jump into 5 different contributions, or some of the biggest contributions that I think that Van Halen apported to the guitar world. So I'm going to begin with the Super Strat. Now, the Super Strat is pretty much something that came out of the blue. By the time he burst into the scene, you were used to seeing just Strats, Les Pauls. Of course, there's all different types of other instruments like SGs and whatnot, Tellys, of course. But you never really saw a Strat type body with a humbucker inside of it. And I don't know if he was the first guy to actually do this, but he definitely made it popular with his Franken Strat. And with this, you could probably say that comes the birth of the Super Strat. And of course, my main guitar, this guy right here. If it weren't for Van Halen, I wouldn't be playing this guy right here. So that's the first thing that comes to mind, is just the Super Strat. So all those different companies, Ibanez, the Schecters, even Sir, all the different type of Super Strat based companies, they pretty much wouldn't exist without Eddie Van Halen. Now, with his incredible tinkering, guess the guy was a mad scientist with the guitar. Came some really amazing instruments. You get the Wolfgang type of guitars, or the Wolfgang models. Of course, the Frankenstrats, the Frankenstein guitars that he built up and just went crazy with. The signature pinstriping, or the signature red pinstriping, which then came the different iterations of that guitar with the yellows and the whites and all that crazy goodness. Now, that being said, he didn't just revolutionize the instrument. He actually revolutionized the type of sound that you could get. And that actually takes me to the next apportation to the instrument, which is the actual sound. It's that brown sound. Now, when looking into the information that I could find towards the beginnings of the brown sound, I find an interview where he mentions that the inspiration for the Brown sound actually comes from the sound his brother gets from his snare drum, Alex Van Halen. And he said that he got such a majestic, huge sounding snare drum, and he wanted to replicate that on the guitar. So the end result, which for him was pretty much the perfect sound, is a ton of gain with still a pretty organic type of sound. And at least that's the way he mentions it. And with that, I think, I really do believe that that is the birth of the modern lead type of sound, just a ton of distortion, because in that era, you did have distortion, but not to this amount. And you didn't get the clean singing sounds that Van Halen actually got. And with that comes a new wave of new guitars with different possibilities, different tonal possibilities. And he got this through just tinkering around with his different amplifiers, using different voltage attenuators like the Variac. Just again, always experimenting with different gear and different modifications to get that specific sound that he had in his mind. Now, this type of sound is so influential that you can find modern amplifiers like my Boss Katana, which the actual highest gain setting is the Brown sound, is actually the Brown channel. And this is definitely, I mean, there's no debating this. This is a direct influence from Eddie Van Halen. Now, since we're already talking about tone, I'm going straight into contribution number 3, which is the 5150 amp. Now, at the core, it began as a Soldano SLO 100 type of amp, but it got modified along the way, and it ended up being the 5150. Now, looking up some information of the behind-the-scenes information as to where does the 5150 name actually come from, I found some information, some interesting information, with some people talking about how it's a police code in California, where they deal with people with psychiatric conditions. So in more slang terms, it ended up being used up as crazy. The other thing that I found was in the actual song 5150, where they talk about different people in different relationships, how you usually get a 50-50 split where 50% goes to one person, 51 and 50% goes to the other. So you get a perfect 50-50 split. But some people always want more, and that gives you an extra one number. So you get a 51-50 split. Anyway, that's not really important. What's important is the actual amp behind the actual story or behind the name. And nowadays, we can find just so many different versions of that amp. And not only that, but we can find so many different people using that specific amp. And it pretty much began, again, like with the guitars and like with the sound, it revolutionized everything. You can find the 5150 is pretty much a staple in heavy guitar driven music. A lot of metal players are using the 5150 or 5150 sounding type of amps. So again, just everything after the 5150 was completely different. Now, the fourth contribution is actually going to be the different gadgets and inventions and trinkets that Eddie just pretty much invented. He holds different patents for different humbuckers, different singles coils or stacked single coils. He holds patents for different headstock designs. There's so many different things that he created. He created the drop D tuner, which if you haven't seen it before, it's actually this little pull or lever that you put on a Floyd Rose tremolo, where you can just drop the low E string to a drop D tuning, and it just happens immediately. Which, I mean, if you're the owner of a floating trem, you know what a hassle it is to go to drop down to D. It'll screw up all your tuning on the guitar. So just by creating this specific trinket, it resolved that huge problem. Another interesting fact that I learned by reading, I believe it was a Rolling Stone article, he actually contributed to Floyd Rose's original design, and it was his suggestion to add fine tuners to that bridge. So again, just contributing so much to so many different aspects of the instrument, and also the use of different attenuators to control the power behind different amps, so you could get those tones at different power levels. Just again, he thought about everything. He really just is very intricate with what he wanted, with the different sounds he wanted. This also opens up a whole new venture of pedals that we see nowadays in the market. You find overdrives, phasers, which he pretty much made famous for guitar sounds. Just a huge line of different effect pedals that you can find nowadays. Now, finally, and this is probably the most obvious of the 5 contributions, is his actual playing. He revolutionized the way you would play not only lead guitar, which is absolutely just, he's a god, he's known as a god for, but he also revolutionized the rhythm guitar approach to the instrument. It's just completely different. The way he would meld both rhythm and lead guitar, like a ton of different players before him, but he did it with a completely new voice. Once he hit the scene, he completely changed everything. The way a lot of guys have referenced this, because I'm not from that era, but I've heard a lot of guys from that era talking, and they just go, "Oh my God, this is a completely new way of playing the guitar." Those are some really powerful words. You're talking about a completely a sense of an innovation that's just completely out of this world. It's a whole new style, a whole new way of playing the instrument. Now, with that being said, there's a ton of different techniques that are just started popping up with them. Obviously, the two-handed tapping, a lot of squeals and dive bombs, and a lot of whammy bar tricks and guitar tricks in general. His use of triads, his use of scales, just so many, there's just so much information within his playing. You could get rock and roll type of sounds. Really, he just came up with his own style. Everything was so innovative and so different at the time that he just completely changed the way people thought about the instrument. So to me, these are 5 of the biggest contributions that he's made to the instrument. And I mean, in what other ways could you really contribute to the instrument? He changed the instrument. He changed the sound of the instrument. He changed the way you play the instrument, and he changed the gear that you use to play the instrument. So really, he pretty much changed the whole landscape. And with that being said, the guitar world is definitely better off once Van Halen put his hands on it. There is a definite Van Halen influence over your guitar playing, your guitar world in general, pretty much any type of aspect of the instrument. That specific sound, that specific energy that he brought to the world, and that's a very heavy, very, very, very strong energy that he brought to the world. That's a big mark that he left on the guitar world, and I at least am very grateful for that.